And we're back. This is Colombia Calling. I'm Richard McColl, episode 473. Not there yet. Just past our 10-year anniversary. My very special guest here to natter everything from tourism to mountain biking and beyond. Brian Murphy O'Neill, great friend to the Colombia Calling podcast, been on the podcast a few times. So from Cali to Bogota, welcome on the Colombia Calling podcast, Brian.
Thank you indeed, my good friend Richard, and happy 10th anniversary.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's an amazing show, as we always say, and it gets better every edition. And I always avidly listen. So do a lot of people. In fact, I was with a couple of folks in Cartagena on Monday. I went up there for a quick meeting and a meet and greet with Dane and Erin from the Californian Agricultural Leadership Program. Something that we do is study leadership courses where we bring over groups of Americans who are connected in some way to a university to do with the agricultural business. And they come over to Colombia to understand agriculture, but to also understand the social and economic situation here. And we were having a beer in that famous bar. Are we allowed to advertise on?
Yeah, go for it.
Cafe Del Mar, that famous bar with the famous flag that you still need to queue up to get into, but still, it's worth queuing up, folks. Listeners out there, if you're in Cartagena, Cafe Del Mar. The best sunset on the Caribbean if you're in Cartagena. But with Dane and Erin, they'd mentioned they knew of Colombia Calling. These folks are from California. They knew of Colombia Calling. So just a little diversification there in the conversations. Credit to you.
Make me feel good on this early morning. We're recording and coffee and so on. But it's nice. I do, again, not sounding my horn or anything here, but it is an English language podcast. And so that is the kind of people I'm trying to get to. That kind of person who's looking at coming to Colombia, doing something, hopefully understanding a little bit more about the country. So I often quote a photographer, a conflict photographer who died in El Salvador. But way back in the day, and he said, you do something good, I'll take a photo of you. You do something bad, I'll take a photo of you. And I say it all the time. And that's, that tends to be my feeling about the podcast. Do something good, such as yourself, Brian, the Legend of El Dorado, La Leyenda, I know it's called, and Leyenda, Dominican Republic, and going amazing places. It's always a pleasure to have you back on, telling us about how well things are going, how amazing. And then on the flip side, of course, we do politics, and there's not, I don't talk politics with you, but I talk with other experts or analysts, and it's never really very positive. And that's the truth, but we try and get it across.
I think the service that you provide, and the key point there you mentioned, Richard, is it's English language. And I'm not saying that that's the be all and end all of everything, but it makes people tune in, people that wouldn't necessarily have Colombia on their radar. And I think it's a great public service that I don't think you get the credit for, in the sense that, well, if you look at the leadership programs we deal with, they're all academics, doctors, PhDs, and they're bright people. They've been around the block, and that's the sort of information that they want, which is honest, transparent, a leveled opinion, so they can make an academic decision and manage the risks of coming to this beautiful country. Saying that, though, the work that the folks do at Pro Colombia, and I know it's hot and cold, but they do an amazing job to promote the country outside. But there is a segment of travelers that want a little bit more than glossy photos, or the vloggers and bloggers that turn around and say everything's rosy in the Garden of Colombia, which majority of the time where travelers go to, it is, Richard. You know yourself that whatever advisory comes from whatever government around the world, they're talking about certain areas that have been classified red in our book, or as we call it, hot, for many years. And that's the way it's been. It's changing, but I think that we all have a voice, whether it be Pro Colombia, whether it be local tour agents, any given region, whether it be Steps Travel or whoever, is that we all have a job to do. It's just getting a balance and letting people have a choice. Where do they get their information from?
Yeah.
Is it from a government agency? Is it from me? Is it from you? Is it from Colombia Calling? Is it from people they've met over dinner who've been to Colombia? We all have a role to play. I sometimes wish that we were a little bit more united in promoting what is a very misunderstood country. There's so many myths and legends about this country. Some of them are absolutely wonderful. The legend of El Dorado, where we get our name from. But some of the other stuff that's written is just absolute poppycock. That, you know, have you actually been to Colombia, or have you written guidebooks sat in a bar in Miami? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I think if we could, I don't, you know, obviously it's hard. Like, let's say the, 50% government agency like Pro Colombia, they have a job to do. They have a job to do, and it's to fill the seats on airlines and cruise ships and fill the hotel rooms and so on. I mean, that's their job. So they've got to paint a picture. But like you say, I would say 90%, well, I hope so, of the people who come to Colombia also want to be able to, like you say, a choice and be able to make a decision themselves rather than be spoon-fed. There are so many fruit. There are so many this. This is the best place you'll do this. This is the best place. Let's be a bit more honest, because I think, we have more discerning travelers, and you can read any number of things now about Colombia. You don't have to go to the academic press, and you don't have to go to vloggers and bloggers. There's any number of things.
Yeah. I think
that's my feeling.
No, I agree with your feeling and sentiment on that, is that it's open for business. And I think that we all do an amazing job because at the heart of it, you don't do what you do, and I don't do what I do without having a love for this country. We're both immigrants. I mean, some people say we're immigrants into the country, and I know that from my family background. To be welcomed. Sometimes I find it a little bit hard that the amount of effort that we put in to promote the country is sometimes misunderstood within. But we still strive on, we still carry on. And obviously the burden of pressure that we went through with coronavirus, for me, you and for everybody in our industries respectively, it was a tough time. And to come out the other side of it and see things picking up is absolutely amazing news. It's wonderful. And I think we all do a great job, and we should all give ourselves a pat on the back for what we do. And I don't just mean you and I mean everybody, the DMCs, the people that send folks here, the cruise ships, the airlines. We should be a little bit more confident in the fact that Colombia is not, it's on the tourist map now. It's got a global reputation. We see that with bringing in 500 people every year to La Leyenda from all over the world that would never come to Colombia if it wasn't for the race. And then what comes from that is they bring their family and friends with them. They talk about it at dinner. And the upsell there is that it's done by people that have been here with their friends. And the best way to sell is that vehicle. Don't get me wrong. Trade shows are wonderful. Conferences are wonderful. It's getting people into Colombia. It's getting them on the airline, getting them into hotels, and go back to a dinner party. And at the end of that dinner party, say, hey, I've got something special. It's Colombian coffee. And just each little thing. And we've seen that growth since our first race way back in 2016. We've seen our demographic grow and expand into different countries where people hear about the race. And that, if there's a sense of achievement to be had, it's bringing people to Colombia that normally wouldn't come to Colombia, and that just upsells it. Like yourself, you open the door in Mompós. We've said this before, and I think the last time I was on was episode 348, way back in 2020. And I listened to it the other day just to reflect and see how much we've come forward. But let's just put the stake in the ground: is you get into Mompós, you created a tourism business there. And, you should share that with the audience as well. What was that like? I mean, back in that day, there was no one operating there. And how do you feel now that you've gone through that? And probably, I'd imagine there's a lot of people there that are on your coattails that are making good on your achievements.
I've always said, there's plenty there, and thank you for the kind commentary. It's never out of place, because sometimes you just feel that but as you say, coattails. I genuinely believe, even in a small town, that, again, people say it's hard to get to. It's not. You get in a car, you get there, or you get in a bus and you get there. I mean, or you get in a colectivo and you get there. You just have to want to get there. It's a different story. But people say it's hard to get to and whatever, and so on. But I genuinely believe in this small town that the cake is big enough for everyone. I genuinely believe. My locations, my businesses, who we work with, again, all of the other competition is good. I do not cater to everyone. I do not cater in the same price range. I have 2 small businesses, total of 17 rooms. 17 rooms does not bankrupt the other 20 odd hotels that have opened up since we opened up in 2008, the first place. So, you know, we do something that's like we because we have a flow even through May, which was obviously low season and quite punishing, we we fill up the other hotels, and that's a good thing. And so we share, I would say, the profits and the love and so on. And the only times that we become a little bit antagonistic is when we know that people are speaking ill of us, or because it's one of those things. It's like they think that they'll perhaps do better if they say, "Oh no, we don't know where that hotel is." It's like this is a colonial center of 3 parallel streets and 40 square blocks, and we've been around since 2008. And I am the foreigner. Well, there are now 2 of us, but I was the foreigner in the town. And you're sort of like, okay, well, fine. So they get put to the bottom of the list, and that's it. You know, when we call to find the next room for the people who can't get a room at the inn, well, they're not on the list, you know, and then they come round and they say, sorry and stuff. And again, it's secular. It's in about 6 months, I'll probably do it again when things get desperate. So I don't really mind. I mean, coattails are coattails. Business is business. I've always said, if you feel you're the first to get in there, but to do it right and to do it well, you'll never really have a problem.
No, but you set the bar. And it's interesting when you say about the cake, and probably a good analogy is the cake in Colombia divided fairly? We can all say probably not, but that's something that has no direct impact on what we're doing as businesses. But generally speaking, is from my experience from the tourist perspective, working with DMCs, and for the folks out there who don't know Travel Talk, and I don't know it that well myself, but DMC is Destination Management Company. The people that do the work in country for agents overseas who sell to their customer base, generally speaking, it's a good network.
Yeah,
they all. I've actually had that comment back from some of the biggest tour providers, Journey Latin America, Kioni, folks that have done trips here, and we've bumped into at conferences. And 2 things. And I was at the Pro Colombia Adventure Travel Mart last year in Manizales, and some of the feedback was very positive towards Pro Colombia. They said it was Colombia and Japan who were the best overseas agencies for promotion that were through coronavirus. They're always there for them, always reaching out with information. So again, credit to Pro Colombia. And sometimes I don't think Pro Colombia gets that feedback that they deserve. They do put the yards in overseas, and they do an immensely good job. But equally, the DMCs get on well together. We meet at trade shows, and we do share ideas. And you got to remember, and that's seen by the operators, the agents. They say, we go to other countries like maybe Peru or Ecuador, and it's a little bit cutthroat. And when you say, do you know this company? You go, oh, no, we don't know them. But of course they know them. They've been working together. So it's interesting how you said about the hotels, and sometimes where's Richard's hotel? We don't know. That's a localized problem. But generally speaking, the folks I've met in tourism, both from government agency side and agents, we have a pretty good relationship. And as you said, the cake is big enough.
The cake's big. Colombia is so diverse. There's everything. I think that's my thing. In terms of the travel agencies, obviously I work with all of them, but we do refer one another. I'm not going to mention travel agencies, but there are travel agencies that are not adventure, for example. And they
Yes.
come, so some will come to me. They're maybe luxury places, and they'll come to me and said, Richard, listen, you know, you travel everywhere and talk to everyone and stuff. We're looking for it, but we need some operator that does a venture, or, you know, down in the south a bit more, or in the Llanos, or in the Guajira or something. We don't know that. Who do you say is the best? And I thought, well, it's these people. And then they'll likewise, they'll pat my back later on with something else, you know.
It's that calm effect, isn't it? Is that what goes around comes around. I remember in the early days, way back with I mean, the Colombian project is 10 beautiful years old this year. And going back to the heady days of setting up with ideas of grandeur, illusions of grandeur, to quote an Irish writer, was that just getting through that and maturing through it and realizing it's a slow process. There are no quick wins, which yet again, looking at it from tourism and the sector in Colombia, is there's no short-term wins. It takes time to build that business and build the hotels and build the infrastructure. And I think that having just come back from the Caribe, so this year we had our first overseas event, Leyenda Caribe, in the Dominican Republic, in the resort called Punta Cana. Overwhelmed with what I saw there. Obviously now whenever I travel, it's quite difficult. I suppose it's like a film director watching a film. You'll pick up the points that no one else is seeing. Everyone's there to enjoy the film. We can't. When you go to a hotel, you're probably sat in reception within the first 10 minutes. You read it up, and it's that. But that desire and that interest is what drives everything forward, because you're always looking. And to see what they've got in Dominican Republic, which has been achieved over the last 30 years, was incredible, to say the least. Everything. And I think the industry in Colombia has a lot to learn from that. Not to copy or plagiarize, but to learn, especially around service. You can have the best infrastructure in the world. Rich, you can have the best hotels, or the best 2 hotels in Mompós, which you have. But if you don't put the service within the bricks and mortar and the level of quality on the food and the drinks list, there's no point. And just sometimes I travel around Colombia, I see these beautiful hotels, glorious hotels. But when you walk through the door, there's an element of service that's missing, that we let ourselves down on. And I think that somewhere along the line there must be funding, either from the private sector or from taxation of travel companies or from government agencies, to put some effort into education on the service perspective, which is when a customer asks for something, it's not a competition. It's just they genuinely want help, and you're there to do that. It's not personal. It's just service. And I think that's what I noticed in Caribe, was having stayed at a lot of resorts on the Caribbean coast, all inclusive. They got it right. They got it right, and people are very happy with that. And the level of service and the quality was great. And we've got all those ingredients. Oh yeah. We just need to mix them all up, bake them, and come out with the product. So I learned from that. But it was great to be in the Caribbean. First race outside of Colombia for all the team at Leyenda, and it was amazing. Everybody in the company, we had a great time. We worked hard. People loved it. We had 250 folks in a great resort, Hotel El Faro, on the beach, all inclusive, not having to change hotels every other night. And just the fact that people loved it, whether they were from the Czech Republic, France, America, Costa Rica, Puerto Ricans, goodness gracious. We had plenty of them over, and they brought a life to the race. It was a bit like Colombia, actually. That passion, that real Latino, we don't give a damn. We're going to scream, shout, holler. And it was just, and for us, that's massively important, because it shows, and we get the same in Colombia when we do La Leyenda, when we go through Salamina, Neira, with all the kids coming out, and like a Tour de France finish. But ironically, we did that, and then we had a couple of folks from where was it in Colombia? Some government department who were talking to people about La Leyenda, that they're coming from the country these folks were in to come and race in Colombia. And then we get contact. You say, "Oh, we never knew." Or I was thinking, we've been here for 6 editions. We've been here since 2016. We've established one of the I don't want to sound too arrogant, but probably one of the most prominent sporting brands in Latin America that's born and bred in Colombia. And we should all be proud of that and market it as we see fit to bring people over to it from a different demographic. But it's nice the word is out there, and we're looking further afield now. We are, by default, how do I put this? We're in the top 5 races around the world, or not a race, an event, an adventure, a tour. And we're from Colombia. I mean, sometimes I've got to sit back and think about that for 1 second, because like yourself, you get buried in the detail of what you do day to day. And sometimes you don't lift yourself head above the parapet and say, look, hey, look at what we've done.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a huge sense of achievement and proudness that we are Colombian, born and bred, and we're going to markets where I know that big American operators and European companies want to do what we're doing, and we're doing it from Colombia.
That's it, isn't it? It's Colombia. You have created, an international standard for a Colombian product and exported it. And I think we need to celebrate that you have been able to do it in the Dominican Republic. And I know that it's up. You've got it already set for May 6th, 2024. May 6th till 10th is the Leyenda Caribe again.
Yeah, again. It's
incredible. I mean, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. As this needs to be, celebrated, because Dominican Republic 2024 mountain bikes, May 6th till 10th. Also, La Leyenda, so the original race, July 24th till 28th, Colombia. So those of you who are interested, check out the website. I will obviously put it on Facebook and Twitter. But if you just put La Leyenda MTB, mountain bike, it will come up. And I think this is what we really need to talk about, is that it's just, we are guests, immigrants to Colombia, but we have created Colombian products. We're not going anywhere. They're Colombian products, and they're being exported to the world. And that is very exciting. And that leads me, when we're talking tourism, we're chewing the fat, really. But at the same time, we are immigrants to Colombia. Have you ever thought, and I'm going off on a digression here, have you ever thought about, or are you a Colombian citizen? Have you ever thought about becoming a Colombian citizen?
Yes, many times. There's a few things that I find challenging, and I'm not one of these folks that needs citizenship to show my credentials. I come from an immigrant family. I think yourself, that there's that strain in the backstory, but I think that there's different ways to show your love and allegiance, wrong choice of words, but your love of a country. And I think that the way I show my citizenship of Colombia is by what we've done with La Leyenda, with the Colombian Project, probably what you've done with the hotel business, creating that in Mompós. And let's not forget, it's not just about your hotels in Mompós, Richard. It's about Colombia Calling. It's about the things that you've written, the people that you've interviewed, all the other things that you do that people don't necessarily recognize, all the advisory and the consultative assistance and help you've given people. I know for a fact, if someone rings up Richard McColl, and I'll probably be the person that's direct them to you, say, hey, Rich, I'm thinking about this. And we have got a community of people within Colombia that, Richard, who should I speak to about this? Or Brian, who should I speak to about that? I think that, in answer to your question, I'm not really fussed. Citizenship doesn't that's not the important thing. The important thing for me is to keep focused on Colombia and keep promoting the country. That's what I've been invited here to do and being given the freedom to do. And that makes me sleep well at night. And your words earlier, super kind. We're doing a great job for Colombia. And what about yourself? What's your residency?
I consider it every now and then, but because married to a Colombian, 2 Colombian children, being here, no plans of going anywhere. But I consider it, and it's also not an easy thing to do. Let's raise the specter of Colombian bureaucracy, and the whole process takes well more than a year. It's costly. I was sent a flow chart by someone, I have to locate it, of what needs to be done to get as far as like, and then there's an exam, and then it's an exam on the Constitution. And then at the end, it's just yes or no. It's down to, I mean, if the guy who's signing off got up in a bad mood, you could be just denied it at the end. And so I sort of went, well, if it's, I'm here. I'm in no risk of going anywhere. And like you said, I don't see it as a necessary flag. And I think at the end of it, I would say it would be nice to be able to sort of wave it in people's faces every now and then, but then it would be, but that's entirely puerile on my front.
You've raised a very debatable question. I appreciate that. As I said, but it's I think it's no different to the UK, the States. You've got to prove your right to say and get citizenship. That's just a global test system, which yet again, I'm not particularly bothered about that. Testing people's understanding of the Constitution that is right in some people's eyes and wrong in others. I look at it and go, it should be judged on what do you bring to the country? What are you doing here? Anyway, I'm not a politician by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that around the world, the way you get citizenship is, I think, a little bit contrived and outdated, and it's not value based. It's like studying for an exam. You study for the exam, and you learn certain facts, but what do you actually learn? Yeah. What do you actually learn by understanding the Constitution? But yeah, I think it goes back to the point, which is you can prove your love of the country by what you do for that country. I suppose that leads into the other question, is that the sentiment that you and I have discussed probably many times over a cold one in the BBC in Bogota. I love that, just chatting in cold weather with a jacket on or a jumper, very European in its feel, which is one of the reasons why I love going to Bogota. Not the traffic, obviously, but I just like sitting. It's got a European feel to it. It's nice. But it's that sometimes I do feel that as being an immigrant is that sometimes the hard work goes unnoticed, which I can't put my finger on why that is. I just try and reflect as if we've reversed the role, and someone came from Latin America, and I think you mentioned the other day that the guys who are doing the coffee business in London, they're being written about in the media, and they're being congratulated for doing something, coming from Colombia and going into probably one of the toughest economic markets in Europe and succeeding. And the plaudits they're getting from both the government and from local media and national press is overwhelming. And maybe you, I, and all the other folks that have come into this country to make it succeed and put it on the map would enjoy that sentiment. Does it hold me back? No. No, not at all. We get on and do it, and as long as you get the enjoyment, and for me, it's bringing people to Colombia who would say, I would never have normally come here, but I heard about you or heard about this hotel, that hotel. And if we can just get that ball rolling and get them, and people say to me, have you ever had people that have been unhappy about coming to Colombia? I can safely say now, hand on heart, both with the Colombian Project and Leyenda, people go home happy. People go home happy. They have a great time. They have good feedback, but they have a good time. And if they're going back with a smile on their face, sat on that plane with their bags of coffee, they're sharing stories. I think that's the best way to promote the country, is and agents selling it. But there's a shift in the market, which I've noticed, which is direct sales. It's a drum that I've been banging on for a long, long time, is that the market is changing into online aggregators. And at that point, I'd mention a company called Elsewhere, a guy called Craig Zapaka that we came into contact with. This guy and his partners, his business partner, set a company up that was acquired by Lonely Planet, the guidebook, the famous guidebook company, because of the way that they've got online, and there's a massive shift change in the market, and you've got to be on top of those things. The way that you sell, the way you market, how you communicate, the content you deliver. At Leyenda, it's almost a weekly process of changing our tack every so often about how do we communicate, what message do we get across, and it takes a lot of hard work, but we're pretty good at it. The team that we've got at the moment, they're incredible. Colombian team they're as good as any of the folks I work with in the UK, and I had some amazing jobs in Europe with amazing people, and we've still got that catchment of highly qualified people that are passionate, that want to work in an environment where they're respected. They see the leadership on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly call, whatever, and none of this hierarchical rubbish where the boss is never to be seen, he's sat wherever. No. They like that approach, that European approach, or that American approach, which is everyone's hands-on. We're in this together. And that's probably been the success of the Colombian project and Leyenda, is that the Colombian folks that come along the journey with us are 100% passionate, professional, dedicated, and they do a bloody good job. And I can't thank them enough. And we've proved that by taking that team from Colombia into Caribe, and just an amazing show. It's incredible.
I think also at the same time, I can mention a friend of mine, Greg, who set up his own sort of visual storytelling company here all those years ago as well, from Where Next. And everyone, Greg Bleakney, wherenext.com, everyone in that agency is Colombian, and they now are being leased out or hired all over the world. It was originally, they sort of focused on solely Colombian things and so on and so forth, because filming here was so much cheaper and the people are so qualified, and there's, any host of things that you can do. But he's got a team now that I think would die for him. And they are out there in places, they go off in the Far East, they're hired to do commercials and everything else. And that's it, because there is such a reservoir of qualified and willing people. As soon as you get that, the loyalty comes in when they know that the company's run properly and they're treated properly. I think that comes in, and then there's an appropriation, isn't there? Yeah, they belong to that. And these people, I know a lot of his employees could go on to perhaps better paid jobs. They don't want to, though. They don't want to. Nope. And I think that's it. Rather than making this a total publicity stunt for him, what you were saying just made me think of his company. That's all.
No, through these conversations, it jolts the memory, and there's we could spend the next couple of days thanking everybody that we've come into contact with, all those people that have given us assistance, help, advice, support, and they're people that I still keep in contact with now. If I'm in Barranquilla, I'm meeting with people. If I'm in Bogota, I'm meeting a network of people. Just going back to the point I can't emphasize enough is that sometimes we talk about the insecurity of Colombia. And I don't mean from the insecurity as in the roads, the infrastructure. I mean from the people. Is that often I think that, I don't know where it comes from, but I think Colombian folks sell themselves short. The youngsters coming through university, they can go onto the global stage. Now, whether or not they have the opportunities to do that is not our call, but they come out qualified, well-educated, bilingual, whether that be in a tourism sector or IT sector or a banking sector, and they look further afield, because sometimes those opportunities that we had when we were growing up, you don't get those in Colombia because of the elements of the workplace and the little committees that run. And is it a level playing field? What we've tried to do, and what you've probably done as well, is our company is a level playing field. Everyone is taken on face value. And if you're good at your job and good at what you do, and you show passion and desire, you'll succeed. And we're always striving to do as much as we can. If people want to take some English lessons, or people want to go and ride a race in Brazil, we do that. Why? because that's what I'd want when I was working for a company. That's the way I want to be treated. I want that.
There's then there's a ceiling for a lot of industries then for
Yes.
Colombians. Yeah.
I think that probably for me is the heartbreaking thing. If I was going to take one negative thing in our call today, is that I see very talented people that reach that glass ceiling where they can't get any higher because of the bureaucracy and what we touched on earlier on with the attitude towards management. But I think it's changing. I think as Colombian businesses realize that for the first time in many years, it's a competitive market now, and you don't have a stranglehold. And I always give the example is that when we saw the advent of Lidl and Aldi in Europe, which Sainsbury's and Tesco's never really believed it would happen, it did on their watch. And now they're one of those two is one of the biggest supermarket chains in Europe. I look at it in Colombia as the market's opening up. D1 comes in, and all of a sudden our local supermarket, La Cotorce or LA14, has gone. Tough market, competition. And what brings competition is the need to have a quality workforce. And if someone's good, promote them through the ranks. And if they start at a checkout, they could become on the board like they used to in Sainsbury's and other environments. But I think it's changing for the better, Richard. There's a long way to go.
Yeah.
But since I've been in this beautiful country working, markets are becoming open. There's a lot of foreign investment coming in. And when you're how can I put it? When you're being recognized from overseas, you've got to perform in a certain way. Your practices around how you run your businesses, you have to step up, because if you don't, you'll be left behind. And I think it comes down to that. Like, there's a whole resource of people in this country that are well qualified to be in businesses. Give folks those opportunities and they will make your business succeed, because you know yourself, it's not all about you, me, or any other business operator. You don't get anywhere without a team.
For me, it was to arrive with capital and a vision. And then I hand over, after the training, after being aware and assured that my team could do it. That's it. I hand it over to them because I want to do other things as well. I don't want to be, totally tied down to details on thread counts and air conditioning units and stuff. That's not my thing.
Working on SEO for the website.
Oh God, that sort of thing. So I get a feeling at the end of it is that the country of Colombia is the same. I don't think there's going to be but the opportunities for people have changed. And I think that is a way of putting it, that will then hopefully create further opportunity and rather than saying opportunity, right? Positive moves.
I totally agree. We're speaking the same language. I suppose the word which I think we're dancing around the word, which is inequality. But I know that inequality in Latin American terms with people from the West, I see it, probably for you as well, is we see it differently. You've got to understand the nuances of the country that you live in. And when you talk about left and right politics, it's not like it is in the UK or Europe. It's a completely different dynamic. So inequality is the thing that I think is getting better because of competition. And that competition is either coming from within Colombia itself with business, it's coming from external forces with foreign investment coming in to try and snap up some of the agricultural business, some of the land rights, some of the farming producing, the land producers. But competition is good. And I think that then lifts the fact that folks become more confident. And, I think that Colombia should be confident when they go out to the world, is tell people about this country, be confident. But I don't mean patriotic. It's all very
different.
Exactly. Is that being patriotic? Yeah, great, I get that. And I understand the sentiment, but be confident of the country that has got some amazing attributes from the people, from the land, from the location, from the weather, all those things that we take for granted sometimes. I'm often at fault of it myself. I take it for granted that I live five degrees north of the equator. I can go out cycling in the Cali bike park. We take it for granted, but that's the same as wherever you are. London, walking past the Houses of Parliament, and yes, so what? And then now I see it. I used to walk past there every day. You take things for granted, but I think it's the confidence within the country of its people. And be proud. You're Colombian. Your country's beautiful. It's absolutely wonderful. And don't hold back. And don't be treated like a second-class citizen. And just, no, you are as good as Peru, Ecuador, Costa Rica. You know, okay, there's some certain elements that need to be enhanced, but all the attributes are here to make it. And I'm not an economist or a banker, but you do look at how the country, not just over the current presidency, but over presidencies over the years, it's gone from strength to strength. Don't get me wrong. There's still issues that are being dealt with that I have no control over, and I have no right to control.
Yeah.
What I can control, what you can control, is people's perception of the country. And any individual that comes on one of our races or one of our tours or stays at your hotel, our job as immigrants is to make them come back with more people. It's really that simple.
Yeah, it makes me think a little bit. The first time I went to Mompós in 2007 on the bus from Cartagena, between a turnoff from the main highway that goes from like the Caribbean coast all the way to Medellin, because we had to come in that way. And there's a turnoff called El Bongo. And somewhere between El Bongo and Magangué, where we had to take the ferry, we broke down. And of course, we broke down in the least shady point of this route. And of course, you know, out there, it's always upwards of 34 degrees, especially by a highway, you know, and there's no shade. And so we're sort of all bundled out of the bus. I'm the only foreigner on the bus, and you know, everyone's somewhat curious. The people I've been sitting next to, I got one of what they refer to as the musician's seats. I got the last seat on the bus, literally the last seat in the bus, right on the back. You know, we bounce around the musician's seats at the back. But and I've talked to them, but the others are obviously all a little bit curious as to, you know, what's this mad gringo doing here. Anyway, the bus breaks down and they want to make conversation, but they're a little bit apprehensive. So their conversations between one another, the local Colombians, got louder and louder, so that therefore I could appreciate them and be drawn in. And I remember the shouting as, the gringos, they can put a man on the moon, but we can't even get a bus down to Magangué. But let's look at the positive. Yeah, they all wanted to make friends. We all made friends, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I've ended up... But someone, I think it was a lady, was carrying a hammer, nails, screws for some reason in her handbag. And these were then used to fix what needed to be fixed under the chassis of the bus to be able to get to Magangué. And you're like, that's what we celebrate. There's a resourcefulness. And I've never forgotten this, you know, that's the reality.
And it's a nice reality. It's a great story that polarizes that it's an industrious country that, you know, they might have not put a man on the moon, but they are industrious and they can fix things. And they sorry, not they, us, we look at things differently.
Yeah.
It's not they, we it's just the way that Latin America is, and Colombia in particular. I just think it's misunderstood and misrepresented. And going back to what we opened up with, is that what you do on Colombia Calling, it's hugely important to get a different side of Colombia out there that's needed and gives a balanced view. And sometimes I think the view is maybe not balanced, and I think that vloggers, bloggers, profile, whatever they do, and they play a huge part for our race and Colombia Project. Hugely important, but you need a balanced view. And I think that view is becoming more and more balanced each day. Still a way to go, but it's much better than I first arrived here back in, for my first trip was in 98. It's changed immensely. And I'm sure there'll be a 1,001 people that will comment that I am wrong. Well, yeah, it's my opinion and I can be wrong. I can take that. That's not a problem. But I really believe, and maybe you have the same sentiment, we'll find out, but I think Colombia has got better than what it was in '98.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and that's sometimes I have conversations with friends and family, and they say, no, it hasn't.
Yeah.
And I go, well, okay, that's my view, that's your view, and never the twain should meet. But that's that polarization in Colombia, is that there's no middle ground. It's always one side or the other. It's good, bad, left or right. But yeah, again, that's what makes it a country to come and see, because it's full of contradiction. It's like Japan. It's sell that, embrace it, and love it, and enjoy it, and pitch it. It's what's your view on that perspective?
Well, I was first here, what was it? Yeah, around then, 98, something like that, and on the Pacific coast. And I can only say that it's got better. I think you and we are able to get up on a balcony and look from above again as immigrants, because we're not, I mean, we are in it neck deep. We are in it. But again, from our condition of being immigrants to the country, we are able to take let's say, I don't want to say it's not a more profound, but it's a broader view of things. And I think that's it. I think at the end of it, it's it. We obviously are very privileged, not only to live here, but we're privileged from a background that we have, and the abilities and the education and everything, opportunities that we have, that obviously so many in Colombia don't have. But I think that also gives us another opportunity to look at it from a different perspective, rather than left or right, rather than it's going dreadfully or it's going well. It takes different perspectives, I think.
I think that we don't have a dog in the fight as immigrants. We have a role to play, and also the fact that it's not my right or any immigrant's right to get on a platform and discuss things about a country. It's not. We're not here to do that. We're here to enjoy it, respect the privileged position that we have to come to this country and be given the opportunity to do things that I would never have done in Europe. So, but don't get me wrong, there's frustrations. I go driving my car, those same things that affect you in London and wherever. And sometimes we get buried in that. We miss that point. It's good to have this conversation whereby we are fortunate. We live in Latin America, in a beautiful country that gives us opportunity and options that we maybe not have got in the country we come from. We've married people that are from Colombia. We've got our family and our infrastructure here. And I maybe the message that to go out to folks out there is, don't be frightened of. And I understand people sometimes get angsty about being called gringos. It doesn't bother me. I'm not bothered. If you want to categorize me as that, or any, be like, so what? I don't really care. But the fact is that there's no need to be worried or frightened. We're not here to come and take the crown jewels, even though are the crown jewels in Colombia? Is there a sword? I seem to remember there's a Bolivar sword somewhere that's very, very important.
Yeah, I mean, that was on the presidential inauguration and so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, there's crown jewels and so. Well, let's say that the gold in the museum, the gold museum, is the crown jewels, and some of our international museums around the world should be very much considering the return of those said items. But that's another conversation, I think.
Well, but yeah, again, you mentioned that, and let's go and have a game of marbles. I mean, if you think about, sorry, no pun intended, but it's one of those things that when, there's been countries out there that have made good, and anyway, that's a different conversation for another day. But I just think that, I was very fortunate when I was back in the UK recently, got invited by the Latin American Travel Association in London, headed up by a guy called Colin Stewart. I think he's connected with Air Europa or something. Went down to the Houses of Parliament or Palace of Westminster, whichever way you take it, and had a great reception down there. Met some really nice people in travel. and we talk about Colombia, and I think that is it Juliana Torres from Pro Colombia in London?
Yeah, I think so.
She was down. I hadn't seen her for a long time. Great to bump into these people that I'd lost touch with because I was busy with La Leyenda. And just to see people discussing Latin America in general and particular Colombia, should film that stuff and put it on, translate into Spanish so Colombia can see the perception of Colombia from people. There's a lot of people there that are 100% committed to Colombia and supporting the endeavors, whether it be at tourism or a charity level. It's heartwarming, and it was a great show. To be on the terrace at the House of Parliament, all lovely, but with people talking about Latin America and Colombia in particular, it was amazing. I have a question for you. I think, are we almost...
We're almost done. We're almost done. But yeah, go with question.
I'm just looking at your T-shirt. And I know that maybe I'll ask for something to be done, but it's obviously the Clash London Calling, a band that is seminal in so many ways. And I know my brother, huge fan of the Clash. I was introduced to the Clash. So London Calling, am I to assume after all these years we've been talking, is that where the name Colombia Calling came from? Pray tell.
Very much so. Very much so. Well, I sat down thinking about how to name something. And I do remember there used to be old radio shows as well. This is something calling. I'm sure it was something. I can't remember. This is Westminster Calling or whatever.
Yeah, it was in the old radio days. Yeah. This is the such and such from court. Yeah, I get it.
And then, of course, the Clash being one of the most formative bands for me in my youth and so on, and being from that area,
that West London boy,
West London, North Kensington type thing, and then I was just like, and it took him, I was like, well, I could call it something else, but no, this is Colombia Calling. And then I can't remember who said it. Someone just went, that is just perfect. And I'm like, that's it. That's done.
I am stunned that it never registers me until I can see that now with your famous record sleeve. London
Calling on smashing the
there guitar, you go. And obviously Joe Strum, if you look at him, love him or hate him, but being in West London, being in Ladbroke Grove, and I remember my brother taking me down there, going to Rough Trade Records. The original Rough Trade, and even I still, when I'm in London, go back there, full of history. But the request I had would be the fade out for today's program. Would it be completely out of order to fade out to London Calling?
Well, let's try it. I will do so, and I will edit it in, and then we will fade out to London Calling before Toto de la Momposina comes in with El Pescador.
Yes.
But then,
do that first. This is just
this is for us and our conversation. Why not? Why not? And thank you for bringing that up, Brian. It's been a pleasure as always. Let's bring this to an end, because I know you and I could natter as if we're having, a couple of pints of the black stuff, but. Richard, I think we need to celebrate La Leyenda Caribe, La Leyenda Dorado here in Colombia. If you are a mountain biker, if you are just interested in Colombia Project, La Leyenda mountain bike races, just look them up. Have a look, see what people are doing here. And let me just say, Brian Murphy O'Neill, thank you.
Richard, always a pleasure, and I'll get myself up to Bogota to have a couple of swift ones and wax lyrical. My closing statement would be, Colombia is an absolutely wonderful country. Anybody who's listening to this program, get yourself over, come and enjoy it. Tell your friends and family, whether it's with me, Richard, whoever, just get yourself to Colombia. That's it.
This is
Thanks, always a pleasure, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Love letter to Colombia, this episode. So thank you, everyone, for listening to episode 473. Thank you to everyone who's been, online listening to us for the 10 years that we've been here. And we will keep on going. So tune in back in next week for episode 474. Now over to some Colombia Calling, London Calling, and then some messages from our sponsors. Thank you and goodbye.